All right, looks like we are now streaming live on YouTube. Today is Tuesday, April 30th, and we have a meeting of the OpenJS Foundation Standards Collab Space. Today we have a special guest from TC39's new task force, Mikhail. I'm going to hand it over to Chris to provide a tiny bit of background summary from the TC39 community, and then also to introduce Mikhail. I'm really excited about hearing what you guys are working on. So take it away, Chris.
Sure. So TC39 recently chartered its newest task group, which is Task Group 5 for Experiments in Programming Language Standardization. The conveners for that are Mikhail, who joins us today, who's from the Language Design Laboratory at the University of Bergen, as well as Yulia Startsov, who from Mozilla, who I think many of you know. And yeah, so he's kindly agreed to join us today to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. So I will share my screen now. So. Right, so I will be talking about this new task group on experiments in programming language standardization. So first about myself, so I am an associate professor in programming languages at the University of Bergen in Norway, and I did my PhD in specification of programming language syntax. And at TC39, I am a delegate from the University of Bergen, and as Chris mentioned, a co-convener of TG5 together with Yulia Startsov from Mozilla. I also do work at Bergen Language Design Laboratory, which is a part of the University of Bergen, and just wanted to share this brief piece of document from the group's strategy for the next 7 years, where we really want to focus on affecting the standardization and evolution of mainstream programming languages. So now to TG5. So the official name is Experiments in Programming Language Standardization, and I think this word experiments can be understood rather broadly. This is one of the 5 task groups within ECMA TC39. We were chartered in February this year, and this can be considered as a sort of revival or a continuation of the TC39 research call, which was originally started by Yulia Startsov. So we have several interested parties and universities and institutions who have interest in the work of TG5. They are mentioned on this slide. So the scope of TG5, according to the formal description at the webpage of ECMA, is to provide a forum for the discussion, development, and dissemination of research work on standardization of JavaScript and related technologies. So, and I was thinking that it maybe makes sense to have this diagram and talk a little bit more about how we are supposed to work besides just having a monthly Zoom meeting. So on the left here I have inputs to TG5, and on the right I have what TG5 is supposed to output. And inputs and outputs are given in no particular order, so they are not prioritized, just a random order of them. So one of the goals of TG5 is to be a venue for presenting and discussing research done within academia on JavaScript and related technologies. So that's this box here, presentations. Then we also want to ourselves identify relevant papers, study them, and present to each other, and sort of summarize them for the TC39 committee. So that's this box here on research papers. It's also important for like a healthy work of TG5 within TC39 to have input, both from within TC39 and also external community members of JavaScript. Say someone has a proposal and they want to have a corpus study on the code base, trying to identify usability of a proposal. So, and then they could actually come to us at TG5 and we can try to have sort of surveys done in a statistically significant manner and actually come back to the committee with the findings that we have. So this box here, the case studies is essentially about what I just mentioned, and they could be a part of this external input box here, but I put it into a separate box to sort of stress that this is important in itself. And then in terms of what TG5 is supposed to output, again, 4 boxes here in no particular order. I could start with this one. So dissemination of, first of all, that the fact that TG5 exists and that we do something, and we basically want to disseminate any research, any findings that are related to JavaScript and related technologies. For example, the presentation that I'm doing right now can be considered a part of this dissemination. Then we want to produce sort of 2 types of sort of artifacts, if I could name them like that. So recommendations and tools. So both are meant to the committee, to the TC39 committee, and to the broader JavaScript community. And in addition, we want to have a research component, so publishing research papers on the findings that we have. And research papers here and recommendations and tools here are essentially orthogonal to each other, so it doesn't mean that any finding that we have or any tool that we implement has to become a research paper, and not every research paper necessarily would be implemented as a tool. So for now I want to focus on these 2 boxes, so recommendations and tools. In terms of recommendations, examples could be ECMA technical reports, input on TC39 proposals or TC39 proposals themselves based on the findings, documentation on best practices, and so on. And in terms of tools, we want to focus on implementing tool support for helping all kind of interaction with the ECMA 262 standard and related standards. So 3 main objectives here is to aid understanding, designing, and specifying of these standards and parts of those standards. And then I have sort of split this into 2 parts. TG5 is a task group within TC39, so our main focus is on ECMAScript and related technologies. And we also think that there is a lot of expertise on standardization as a driver for programming language evolution within TC39. So the main focus is on ECMAScript, but if it happens so that while working on some topic we get a result that is applicable to other programming languages, then it's only a positive thing. But as can be seen here, more focus is on ECMAScript. And then this one basically would allow us to have connection to other standardization organizations, to other programming languages, but this may be for the future. And then, as I mentioned, TG5 is supposed to be a venue for discussing, presenting research papers, studies, experiments on JavaScript. But the meetings themselves can be like a sort of like mini plenary meetings where we could actually discuss some technical content and come up with some ideas. And then to facilitate building a community around research on JavaScript, we intend to arrange workshops which will be collocated with hybrid meetings of TC39. So we would identify a university in the town where a TC39 meeting is about to happen, and then we will try to work with them to actually present what the committee is doing, maybe to have a panel discussion with the students and the members of the committee, and actually to listen to what members of those universities to listen to what members of those universities work on, and how we can sort of find a common platform, common platform to continue research work together. And then I can talk a little bit in more details about areas of investigation. So they can be sort of roughly split into 5 different directions. So technical aspects, which I will be talking more a bit later, and then standardization related aspects, things like cross-standard research, language drift, governance and decision-making aspects of programming language standardization, educational aspects like interactivity in standard documents, integrating programming language standardization in computer science education, and also linguistic, legal, and perhaps some other aspects like natural language properties of standards as the language of standards, copyright and programming language standardization, and so on. And now I want to give sort of example of possible work within this first item, technical aspects. So work on formalization, specification. So we could look into modularization of a standard document, extracting a sub-language standard, slicing a standard document, verification, consistency checking, executability of a standard document, refactoring of standard document. And here on the right I have sort of interesting perspectives that TG5 wants to focus its work on, sort of across all of these areas of investigation that I mentioned. So this is ease of navigation for a standard, customizability of a standard, like how well it is adapted to be taught and explained and understood, and so on. And then here I have examples of work on human-computer interaction that can be done within TG5. So corpus studies, for example, collecting users' feedback on a proposal in a statistically significant way. Trying to extract argumentation schemes in decision-making, thinking about the rationale of decision-making by the committee. Various kind of analysis of meeting minutes, eye tracking, how users read standard documents, accessibility of standard documents, localization of standard documents, naming proposals. I mean, these are just examples, but you sort of get the direction that that this work can have. So to facilitate this, we intend to maintain a list of relevant research publications, a list of ongoing studies which are affiliated with TG5, and a list of suggested topics, ideas to explore that we actually want external input on. So what are the members of the broad JavaScript community interested in, and what do they want to see sort of investigated, researched? And then I have several examples of the first item here, relevant research publications. So the ones that I will show now, they have been published before TG5 was chartered and are not affiliated with TG5. So this is just the publications that TG5 is interested into looking at and actually learning from what what the prior art is. So this is an article about executable ECMAScript standard from the group that worked on ES Meta. This is another approach to implement an executable JavaScript standard. This is a corpus study, empirical study on how users use certain JavaScript features. This is a very recent paper on the usage of new JavaScript features in transpilers. And yeah, so these were sort of just examples of what kind of papers we are interested in, just learning about them and presenting them within TG5 meetings. In terms of how TG5 works, we have a GitHub repository within TC39 organization. We have a metrics room. We have monthly meetings with alternating time slots, and we plan to have workshops which will be collocated with TC39 hybrid meetings, and we will use alternative copyright notice in technical reports and the artifacts that we produce as a part of TG5 as a result of TG5's work. And just as an example, sort of switching my hat now from TG5 co-convener to just a researcher at the University of Bergen, we have this project on a trivial standard where we want to design a trivial programming language and make, or rather implement, an executable specification that would focus on interactivity, customizability, ease of navigation, accessibility, didactics, sort of like how is it actually good from the pedagogical perspective, versioning, and sort of other dimensions. And then grow this language and grow this specification so that as a result of this work, we can present this to the TC39 committee, and sort of this would be one example of a recommendation as I had on my slide with the diagram. Right, so yeah, thank you very much. I would be glad to discuss this.
Questions before I start asking all of my questions? Give other people an opportunity to ask first. If not, I will dive into mine. And I wonder if you might go back, Mikhail, to one of the slide, I think the slide where you had like the inputs and outputs, and so
Yeah.
I just wanted to better kind of understand, that the scope of the effort is really on ECMAScript first and foremost, but you're
Yes.
hoping to divine some maybe common things that might be generalized to other languages that are actively being developed elsewhere. Is that right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So I wonder how you might, like, because JavaScript is oh, and then I had another question too, because let me finish my first one though. JavaScript is sort of a uniquely developed language. Do you suppose that there might be like quite a big difference between, for example, just the way this community works and the way this technology has been developed with, say, that of Dart or C, or like how much are you anticipating there to be lessons learned for other projects?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. So as I mentioned, as a part of TC39, the main focus is ECMAScript, and sort of as I try to depict here, if we find something that is applicable to other programming languages. This would be a very nice result, but we first and foremost will be focusing on ECMAScript exactly due to the reasons that you mentioned, that it's uniquely defined. This language is specified in a unique way. So it's quite difficult for me to anticipate right now how much of commonalities we will be able to find. But this is a great question. This is what TG5 is for. So
because I ask because I just wonder if there's a certain point at which this goes from like, oh well, we're just sort of like understanding the ways in which this is different to maybe potentially like an advocacy for this being a better way to do language standardization. And I realize it's a tricky thing to say out loud, but you know, is there a point at which we might be going, here are the benefits of this approach, and we should export this as sort of a thing we want others to do? Maybe that's just like, you know, I think we should, but
yeah. I mean, but sort of, it's just that TG5 just started
right
2 months ago, right? And it's we actually need to. Well, one of the main tasks I think now is actually to build a community around TG5, so that we actually have more researchers who will investigate all of this. And the hope is that somehow this synergetic effect will drive this effort of TG5, and then someone would be interested in studying some other programming language, and they would actually come from the perspective where, okay, we studied that other language and maybe that is applicable to JavaScript, and then we can actually try to build sort of a bridge from that direction. But, yeah, it's a fantastic question. I don't have a precise answer to this now.
Well, certainly
But
that.
I do agree that it would be really great to actually export what we find as sort of good practices of JavaScript for to specification and standardization of other languages.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that like that documentation on best practices, particularly like, you know, to the extent that because it also is also a language that is developed pretty radically online, and that is not common for any other kind of standard, really. I was just meeting with a group earlier that's going to be undertaking their first standardization effort on GitHub publicly, and they're freaked out about it because they don't know, you know, what that really means. But you guys at TC39 have been doing it for years and years. So I think that I think that the group has a lot of knowledge to share, you know, if there's a lot of like, you know, material there to potentially delve into. The other question that I was going to ask was about, I think versioning,
Yep.
right? And so like on the next slide, you had kind of slicing a standard document and refactoring. Are you going to be looking at like how, because ECMAScript is published also at ISO, and they have a very specific idea about how things should be, you know, versioned and packaged and all that kind of stuff. Are you going to be taking into account some of those constraints in your research, or, you know, making any kind of...
Right. So versioning here can be maybe understood in two ways. One is in terms of standardization organizations versioning, and another in like versioning of a standard which is not yet a standard but a specification that you're currently that you're currently developing. The idea is to explore the possibility of having one part of a standard one part of a standard document having one version and another part having another version, and then say trying to actually find whether, even though they are from different versions, they can still be consistent with each other and can still coexist. So this one here was more of a technical sort of nature. Like say you have different versions of the same feature design, and then you want to sort of swap these features and then see how this would have sort of swapped the versions of a particular feature, and then you would sort of see how it would affect other parts of the standard. But what you are suggesting to actually take into account the standardization organization's perspective on versioning, it's a different dimension, and yeah, this totally makes sense to have this. But what I sort of implicitly meant here was like sort of technical, sort of during the specification and during the design phase.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting because I see the tension in a lot of our open spec projects between, we want to have documents which are living and evolving and can be updated more frequently versus, the international standards organization approach, which is like we're locking in specific versions. Those versions are, not maybe updated for a year or more. And so TC's 39's ability to kind of the way that they've sort of divined to suit both worlds, I think is another unique feature of ECMAScript that's worth exploring.
Yeah. Yes.
Other questions for Mikhail? A lot of the folks here are already on the TC and have probably seen some of this before, so probably got their questions in sooner. Yeah, Chris, or Victor, excuse me.
Okay. I'm actually I have a master's in physics, but I haven't started with science. So just maybe a fresh pair of eyes perspective. So when this talking about TG5 based on a lot of different resources like tools, research, comment, discussion to decide on what is the best standard. Is there any like theory to like you typically follow to like decide what should be the right standard?
So if I understood correctly, the question was, is there any theory to understand, to kind of determine whether something is a good standard?
like so-called formal language theory, just any computer related theory that
Right.
is referenced for that?
Right. So programming language research mainly focuses on specification formalisms for syntax, for semantics. And I think what TG5 is trying to attempt is to enter a little bit of an unexplored territory of researching widely adopted languages evolution. So we want to develop that theory of how widely adopted languages should and could be evolved. Of course, we will base on existing programming language research, but it's
so the goal of the research is to, from the experience, develop some kind of theory.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
I think my last question, Mikhail, would be like, what would be helpful for the TG5 from the perspective of the open source JavaScript projects represented here in this community? Is there anything like, should we be looking for your surveys? Like what kind of thing can we do to help sort of provide
Right.
input.
I think it would actually be great if we could get this sort of ideas to explore. So what the community really wants to have. We will set up a web page for TG5, and then there will be a way to actually suggest those ideas. So this would be one sort of very fascinating contribution from the community. And sort of we will also publish projects that we are currently working on. And then if there is interest in those projects, then any form of collaboration, any form of participation would be very welcomed. Say this project that I mentioned at the University of Bergen on implementing a trivial standard. So if there is any input on this would be very great. So basically following what we are doing and sort of just bringing ideas. We can try to find people to implement them, but we want to understand what is important for the community. And if the community can also participate in what we are doing, if you folks find it actually interesting.
I remember the other thing I was going to suggest or just highlight, the MDN team has executed pretty large survey, and I know Yuli is at Mozilla, so she can probably connect dots, but I know that there's a way that MDN has in the past done surveys for folks that are going to MDN to like reading the reference docs and so that might be a place for you guys to go take a look and see if they have data that they can contribute or yeah, that's so.
Yep, certainly. Yeah.
Cool. Well, if there are no other questions, I thank you, Mikhail, for coming.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's go to issue 283. That is becoming a TC39 delegate, opened by the one Jacob Jingleheimer. Hello, Jacob. You're here. Talking about
Yes.
you like you're not. Link in the chat, Zoom chat to the issue for you all. Let's see. Well, I suppose, Jacob, you can speak to this issue if you want to introduce it.
Sure. So like what it says on the tin. I was asked by Daniel, I don't know what his surname
Aaron Berg.
is. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
That. I was asked by him about a month ago to champion two new proposals, two new specifications in TC39. And then it was brought up that you need to be a delegate in order to do that. And he said I should talk to OpenJS about getting a nomination for it. So now I'm here. Do I need to like introduce myself?
I mean, it'd be nice, you know, we like to know you. If you want to say,
Okay.
you know, I like, you know, dogs
Sure.
and cats and yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
So I'm a core collaborator for Node.js, contributor to a number of other OpenJS projects, and still more outside of that, particularly in the testing space. And those are the two specifications that Dan asked me to champion. And after that conversation, I was also asked to join the Harmony working group. I don't know what it is.
There's a matrix room for it. It's not as a call. It's not really a thing, though.
Oh, okay. That.
It's like a joint effort, maybe.
Okay. They asked me to join the effort.
Cool.
Which I have done.
Any questions for Jacob? I just have one. Are you you're currently in the Netherlands? Is that right?
Yes.
Cool. And are you currently employed by an ECMA member company? No. Okay. Any other questions for Jacob?
Yeah, I mean, I think to your basic question, like, yes, I think you should be able to be a delegate. Part of the responsibilities of being a delegate are coming to this meeting continually and like before a plenary, like telling us about anything you'd want to object to and also anything you'd want to put on the agenda, and then after plenary, like summarizing it. So in the like for these two proposals, for example, like I'd be interested to hear the phrasing and to talk about that in this meeting and like to like read more about it.
Sure, like
in
right now.
from a strategic standpoint, right? Like proposals do best when they're first framed as a problem to solve, and they don't really instead of focusing on the suggested solution, even though that should be part of it. So like mocks and assertions sound like solutions, for example.
Well, okay, fair, yes. I think they are like we've more or less had these conversations for a very long time, and mocks and assertions are kind of the result of those things. So I think that's why we've more or less skipped it. But I can give a brief overview of the problems.
That'd be great.
So the problem that a mock is trying to solve is when you have when you need to test something and you are trying to, like any good scientist, control your variables. Yes, Chris?
Oh, I I didn't raise my hand to interrupt, but since I have now effectively interrupted, do we maybe want to like defer this particular aspect to like once we resolve the matter at hand, which was the broader joining as a delegate?
Yeah, I do. We should separate Jacob's ability to successfully describe what these proposals are and how we've arrived at whether they're meaningful is separate from Jacob's ability to serve as a participant on behalf of our projects. So just saying that, I think out loud. But to Jordan's point, we do want to know that like the folks who are raising their hands to do that have some piece of work that they're trying to advance, which has been established.
So a couple things. A note that Jordan mentioned to talk about anything that you would oppose at a plenary. I think it's equally, if not more important, to talk about any proposals that you would explicitly support at the meetings. But and the other question I was going to ask is, and just with my sort of ECMA hat on, even though I don't work for ECMA, it's not a realistic prospect for your employer to join ECMA. You don't have to answer, but okay.
I did just want to add, we had a lot of discussion about this when we were forming the standards group. Technically, as a delegate, you are given the latitude and trust to do anything you want at plenaries except object to things. That requires previous consensus with this group. However, there's a little bit of wiggle room in that if new information comes up that you didn't have a chance to check with us first, you can block something, but you need to expect that like you're going to have to sort of justify that in the next standards meeting.
Okay.
So it's like a good courtesy and a good idea to circulate everything that you plan to talk about anything at the meeting in advance, just to make sure you're representing this group. But like the only explicit requirement is that you not block anything without either getting advance approval or like, very, very confident after the fact justification.
Okay, cool. Yes, the name delegate makes more sense. So it's not just an autonomous person going around, but one who represents a collective. Cool.
I just have a question regarding that policy. Is that noted anywhere?
I can try and find it, but yeah, we argued about it for many months.
Yeah, I remember that also.
'Cause that seems like something that would be important to have in like
Yeah.
member representation.md maybe or something.
Yeah, if it's
Maybe
not,
expectations.
it should be in expectations, if not, and if it's not there, it is an oversight, but we've definitely reached that.
Yeah, it's sort of loosely described. Oh, not that issue. Sorry, my copy paste didn't work. In the member expectations link or
About
document in the
conflict
standards repo.
with
Yeah, it's about that, but there's a specific comment about consensus, and yeah, it's not super explicit in the document, and it's fine if we want to make it so, but that was there might be meeting notes that I could dig into further and try and find, but like that was the conclusion at the end of all of that, was that like that because we wouldn't, like, for example, we wouldn't want a PR situation where the OpenJS Foundation delegate is the reason some proposal everyone wants didn't advance. And so like we want to make sure that that's representative of the group. Supporting a proposal arguably could fall under a similar concern if we're a lone supporter. So like, there's a lot of like latitude and judgment given to delegates from this group. It's just like the assumption is that like if no one in the group would agree with what you're about to say, then be very careful saying it, or maybe don't until you talk to us, right? And that's like an extra constraint. And personally speaking, since I'm vocal on a lot of things, that's why I have chosen not to be an OpenJS delegate, because I don't want that constraint. But that's like part of that hat.
You are a delegate, though.
I'm a delegate through my employer, and in between jobs, I've been an invited expert. If I ever was required to be a delegate when I didn't have an employer who was an ECMA member, OpenJS delegation is the way I would have to do that, but then that would impose a constraint I prefer to avoid. But yeah.
Yeah, so is my question. And yeah, the member expectations doc is in good shape. Whatever keywords I was searching for, trying to find, was not pulling up the necessary, but that seems pretty clear and sufficient to me as far as that's concerned. There is a slight grammatical issue towards the end of the sentence that Richard just pasted, which is from that document. But it's not a big deal. I think people can still understand. But
yeah, feel free to send tweets
PR is welcome. You know, Jacob, maybe
Yeah.
want to do your first PR to correct a grammar mistake. Feel free.
Okay.
So, maybe some of the ground rules, or this sort of the spirit out of the way. Are there any objections or concerns with supporting Jacob as an OpenJS Foundation delegate from the Node project? Great, and this has been issue's been open for a month, so certainly our community has had ample time to adjust. All right, welcome Jacob to our party.
Woohoo!
Functionally, this means we will add you to our list, and we will update the ECMA team that you're part of our reflector. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
So somebody needs to take the action of sorry.
What's going on with your stop there? Sorry. Go ahead. Someone needs to take the action of
Take the action of filing an admin and business issue for the onboarding.
Yep.
That could be Jory, or you could delegate to any of us that are here, and whatever you want.
Sure.
I need to do this, or Jory?
No. One of the
Existing
OpenJS
delegates.
representatives,
Yeah.
with either Jory or with Jory's permission, will create an onboarding issue in a repo, a private TC39 repo for our onboarding steps for new delegates.
Why don't I do that while Jacob explains, or while we now dig into maybe a little bit more history of the background of the proposals, if that's good. Okay,
sure.
Cool.
Okay, so the two proposals that are requested are mocking and assertions. So when you are unit testing something, for instance, like any good scientist, you want to control one thing, like you want to change one thing at a time, only look at one thing, and you want to control everything else to keep it constant, so that you are sure that the thing that you are testing is the thing that you are testing. So when you have external dependencies, those can skew your results. So if you're testing A and A depends on B, and something is wrong in B, A will appear to be broken, whereas A is actually perfectly fine. And so that is the purpose of the unit test, is that you are checking A, not B, or A and B's interaction with each other, just that A works, and then B will similarly have something else. And the solution that has come out of that is mocking. So when you're doing your test of A, you say, shh, 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 this is B. And A is none the wiser that you have replaced B transparently. And so you say, when A asks B for something, you tell it explicitly what B is going to do, and you don't actually let B do it. And then an assertion is how you say, this is what was supposed to happen. And there are like a few very, very common ones, and then there are some more exotic ones. But the common ones are pretty similar. And from speaking with Dan, there is already more or less agreement on what those would look like. It's mostly a matter of someone actually writing them down and then like stamping it. And I guess the reason that he asked me about this is because I have been like I was contributor to Synon's technical design and some implementation back in the day, just as well. Some with Chai and some with Mocha. So I have been around. That's my TED Talk. Any more?
Any more questions for Jacob?
I mean, at a high level, it sounds great. I think I'd really love to look at a more detailed proposal repo whenever you have that ready.
Okay, yeah, I haven't
I've
started yet.
written mocking and assertion libraries before, and I maintain a number of them. So I'd like want to know how those, like how the feature sets overlap, and like, are there any foot guns that I know of that like maybe aren't covered, aren't avoided in the proposal, or are there any new ideas in the proposal I could use in my own stuff? So I kind of just want to get a sense of that, but like not as a blocker to presenting it, just I'd love to do
Yeah,
that.
sure.
Cool.
Love the collaboration. That's why we're all here.
All right. Well, that takes us to basically the top of the hour with 2 minutes before end of meeting. Any other business to take in 2 minutes? Boop, boop. Going once, going twice. Stopping the live stream. Thank you all for tuning in to our YouTube. And we will see you in a couple of weeks at the next